We were building a whole lifestyle through music.
I got 21 seconds to flow. I got 21 seconds to go. Cause if you like me, let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. So if you like me, let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go.
Yo, it's Lisa Mafia, and this is the making of So Solid Crew's 21 Seconds. I kind of remember from before So Solid was established, there was a group they formed called SOS. So Solid Boys and myself had all grown up on the same estate. And the whole way through our childhood, we were very music driven. And I think, honestly, that's because we had nothing else to do. We had nothing else to do. There wasn't computers. Our families couldn't afford all the, the luxuries of children's toys, meaning computers and stuff. So we were together outside on the streets, musically connected. And I think that's where it all started. So Solid were my friends from 13 years old. They chose me to perform and go on my very first track, my very first time in the studio, on a track called Oh No, Sentimental Things, which was our very first official track.
It's just a little things, sentimental things, about the way we keep the break relaxed. So solid, we rock the mic, and if you know what I mean. So solid, so
I don't know if I ever thought about the fact that this record was going to make me the Lisa Mafia I am today. That record got signed. We used to play it all the time at our underground raves. And I never used to go, to be honest. I never used to go because I just done the track and got on with my life. I was working at an off license in Brixton. That record got signed, and that was the beginning and the birth of Lisa Mafia, I guess. Everyone in So Solid Crew had a little niche about them. Romeo had this really bassy voice, and long before we decided to make a record out of his MC lyrics, let's not get it twisted, Oh No was one of his famous underground party lyrics. That was being sung back as if it was already a song before we made Oh No. We knew it would work, and we knew that if we put it on a record, then it could get to absolutely everyone, and DJ would start playing it back to us. We didn't just have to jump on stage to perform anymore. We could have a record playing without us even there. So I think they established, and it weren't me, it was Mega Man, Max, Romeo. They knew that if they made a record, then we don't even have to be there anymore. People are singing it back as if it's already a song. What happened is that we made Oh No, but we also knew there was another 30-odd artists right there that can't all be established right at the same time. We knew that we had so much talent under one roof that how are we gonna get this out there? How are we gonna tell the world what So Solid really is way before it was announced to the world that So Solid Crew is a whole group of people? Before we made 21 Seconds, G-Man actually said, do you know what, guys? I've worked it out. It's 3 minutes, whatever it was, I think 3 minutes 20 something for a track to be played. That's the length of a track. If we had 21 seconds each, we could all get the main artist on this track. So we created it. That's where that creation comes from. And that's why it became the track it is today, and how we established all the main characters of So Solid Crew. We had our entire empire under one roof, and it was the fact that we needed to get every artist out as quick as possible, but to show that So Solid was more than Lisa Mafia, Mega Man and Romeo. And 21 Seconds was created.
I got 21 seconds to go. Cause if you like me, let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. So if you like me, let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go.
We was with a small label at the time called Relentless, and they couldn't afford us anymore because the fame that came from Oh No was so big, was so demanding that they just could not afford to get us that level up. And Independiente part of Sony, they came along and whipped us up and budgeted for 21 Seconds to be created, every time someone went into studio, everyone wanted to change their lyrics because they heard the last person's lyric and they were like, no, I need to make mine better. I need to make mine stronger. It needs to be cooler. Especially when Romeo went in and said, turn up the bass line. That was it. Everyone was like, no, we gotta record. But it just all made sense. As each artist went in, and it was like another layer to the most perfect song was being created. We knew, I didn't personally know, but the boys, they knew it was gonna be a hit. We just love music. We came from the underground, you know, we love music. It's part of our life, it's in our DNA. But we didn't know particularly how to do that unless we done it raw, like guerrilla marketing, that's what we was on, like stickers everywhere, flyers outside tube stations, selling our records outside the record shop because we can't afford to pay to be inside the record shop. That was us, we were ready to go. And I feel like that is what the core foundation of So Solid is that we're like DIYers, we did it ourselves. We were building a whole lifestyle through music.
I got 21 seconds to pass the mic. I got 21 seconds to say what I gotta say. But you won't mind me anyway. But I won't hesitate. So sorry, could just get it. We're gonna get back to the topic.
As my name, Lisa Matthews, never believes that it's actually my real name. They don't believe that that's my daughter at the very beginning of 21 Seconds. Ha ha ha, what you laughing at?
What you laughing at?
I said it on my show on Capital Extra just a few weeks ago that I got my daughter royalties. I feel like such a great mum saying that. I got my daughter some royalties by having her perform those lyrics at the very beginning of 21 Seconds. And that came about because of her stepdad, G-Man. And he said, she used to say all the time, like winding us up, like, ha ha ha, what are you laughing at? And just run off. She was only 4 years old. And he said, that would sound so sick at the beginning of this track. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're so weird. And he did it. And it was, I think it's just cements the entire track altogether. And she still gets her royalties today. I think the videos was one of the most powerful aspects of So Solid's career. We spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on videos. It was actually shot on real film, real time, real segments, like a movie. I think with So Solid being the way they were, we knew we were characters, and we needed to establish that through every aspect, that everyone was an individual style artist that came together to form So Solid Crew. There were so many different characters within So Solid that needed to match the way they look, the way they dress, because even though we was like all in leather, we'd all have our own sort of style of leather. I was nothing like any of the boys, but I didn't really want to be girly, so they kind of put me in leather, long dresses rather than the short minis, and then I still had my trainers on. The same as every single boy in So Solid Crew, they kind of dominated their own individuality and brought it together for the movies that we made. I feel like we were the Elvis and the Michael Jacksons of UK music because, again, his Thriller was a whole premiere, wasn't it? Like it was a movie and it was just a music video. But he had made a scene out of it and it made sense to So Solid being part of that type of legacy because it wasn't normal. It wasn't, even I saw it, I was like, this is crazy. It was the most scariest thing on the day of the shoot of 21 Seconds. It was like stepping onto a movie scene. It was just madness. I knew for the very first time that So Solid is going to be something to be reckoned with.
Mega Man, I'm first 21 second, no shit. I ain't got no time to smoke this, hold this. Yo G, roll by in a black top TT. Mega Man, camera 2 gets easy. Seeing stars on the wrist, they wanna jap me. Say,
being number one is only a small part of it because we had so many wins on our climb to number one with 21 Seconds. And it was there for weeks as well. I think one of the most amazing things that I was like, wow, like, are we really doing this? Was the support actors. We were support acts for Eminem, for Christina Aguilera, for Ja Rule and Ashanti. And that was like, but we're garage, but we're just from the underground. But there was like all these buts, like, how are we doing this? This is crazy. The feeling of performing at the Brits was different to the Mobos because the Brits was like even more commercial. It was like, again, another win because we had been clocking up these different wins. There were so many music awards. They all melt into one. But Brits, that kind of stands out for me because one, we recreated a style of 21 seconds type video for our performance with cars on stage and people popping out floors and all sorts going on. You couldn't forget that performance. We were in a commercial space at that time. Brits is very commercial. We were up against artists that we weren't ever put with. And we managed to steal the show because we brought our own style and our own sort of creation to it. I think that's what was So Solid brought to the Brits, and that one does stand out for me because it was completely different for us. Top of the Pops. We actually got kicked out of Top of the Pops. Why? Because them lot was smoking. Set off all the fire alarms in the Top of the Pops studio. But anyway, that wasn't me. It wasn't me. Yeah, doing Top of the Pops that one is one that you're like, Mum, I made it, you know? Like, I'm on Top of the Pops. And you know what killed it is that we were still allowed to be us. We were still allowed to be in our tracksuits and every lyric was still sung. We was allowed to be us still in a very dominated commercial pop industry, you know, on a pop show. It was a cool Top of the Pops. We were part of that. That was when I'm still like, wow.
21 seconds to roll. I got 21 seconds to go. Cause if you let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. So if you let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. Did you see me on the video? Oh no. So if you let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got to go.
The negative impact the press had on us was really deeming to us because we had, as much as we had all this fame, your money don't build as quick as your fame, you know. So we were still in those council estates with all this fame. So we had a lot to contend with because where we come from, no one has anything. And we looked like we had something because the labels dressed us in what we chose to wear. So that made us look rich. We had these TTs in our videos that made us look rich, but we're still living on the same council estate with real poverty and families with nothing. Our audiences were also from those poverty-stricken places, and they were following us to the race because that was our foundational fans. So things were going to happen because once you have poverty and you have high lifestyle, there is jealousy that forms, there is things that happen, there is reason for some of So Solid crew to feel like they had to defend themselves. So things were going to happen, and it always did. And no matter what happened with or without us, it would always deem back to because of So Solid. But they were just attending the events of their fans of who we were. So as much as it was really damning to us and it was quite damaging to our brand and it was upsetting, I think we still got what we wanted out of it, and that was to show you can make it and that everything is possible. Anything is possible. So as much as it damned us at the time, it's not tarnished our legacy.
21 seconds, 21 seconds, 21 seconds, 21 seconds, 21 seconds,
21 seconds is way bigger than me. Just because I'm still being recognized. And then I went on to do R&B and hip hop on my own as a solo artist. But 21 seconds established me. And no matter what I play on stage, they expect and they demand 21 seconds to be played. That track had a whole life of its own. That track established every single one of us to do whatever we wanted for the rest of our lives. We still play 21 seconds because it's just one of those tracks that can be anywhere because it's made such an impact that no matter what you listen to, you will appreciate a little bit of 21 seconds.
I got 21 seconds to flow. I got 21 seconds to go. Cause if you like me, let me know. Let me in the studio. I got 21 seconds before I got
21 seconds. 21 seconds.